Alaska has had traditionally some really good capacity in interdisciplinary science. So we do very well linking oceanography, physical oceanography and atmospheric sciences together, for example. Climate change requires you to look at the biological community as well as the physical properties. We know how to do that. Adding the human social dimension to that is really the big quantum leap of linking social sciences, which have different culture and different approaches to build a common framework for we're looking at the resiliency of the communities, the people and the communities in the environment where we are understanding the physical changes.
So this is fundamentally different. It basically takes science as an academic exercise and it turns it into a partnership, essentially the co-production of science with the communities. So they become partners in the science. And I think it improves our science, but it also means that the products from the science have direct short-term and long-term relevance on the ground.
The supercomputers are used for a wide variety of research. It's really the necessary tool. A supercomputer is a necessary tool for climate research, for weather, a lot of the permafrost. So many of the science areas, oceanography, ocean ice modeling, these are really key areas for the University of Alaska, and supercomputers are a necessary tool for doing that research. So it's really a pleasure to be involved with such a wide variety of researchers here on campus and to make sure that they have the tools they need in addition to things like field research and graduate students, all these wonderful things, but the computational resources is a critical element of their science.
The Alaska Satellite Facility was grown out of a science project that was a collaboration between scientists here in Alaska and scientists in California at the Jet Propulsion Labs. And what they discovered that they needed was a ground station in the Arctic in order to get data from satellites that came over that are pertinent to the Arctic region. Because once NASA realized how important and valuable it is to have an Arctic-based ground station, then the work that we do has expanded beyond that original intent. But we're still very much, like I say, rooted in the science, rooted in the research, and that defines a lot of the missions that we take on.
Big problem in not only rural Alaska, but pretty much all of Alaska, with the exception of maybe the Anchorage Bowl where they have natural gas, but it is a high price of fuel. And there's a lot of interest in using biomass, mainly woody biomass, for fuel. And a lot of the questions are, well, okay, how often, can our forest, what's the capacity of the forest to produce biomass, or can we grow biomass as a crop? Will it work in rural Alaska? We're just really starting to get some programs developed, working with the Division of Forestry and to some extent some of the native corporations to try to start doing some of that collaborative work with those agencies as well as people in rural Alaska.
We're using genomics, molecular biology, a lot of other kind of new techniques to really understand, let's say, bacteria in the ocean. The old methods was to look at through a microscope and you might see 1% of the actual bacteria there and viruses. But if you start using genomics, you find thousands where you only thought there were a few.
We are the International Arctic Research Center. So we partner very strongly with the Russians, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Koreans, and many of the European nations that are working so much up there. We're sharing data, we're sharing understanding, we're sharing our models, so we can try and get the greatest achievements possible for all nations.
So we have groups that study volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunami. We have a snow, ice, and permafrost group. There are 100,000 glaciers in Alaska, and we have faculty and students and staff to go out in the summer and study and fly out to glaciers and make measurements. We have a tectonics and sedimentation group that studies the Earth on much larger spatial temporal scales. We have a remote sensing group that uses aircraft and helicopters, unmanned aircraft, and satellites to study Alaska and the world. We have a meteorology, an atmospheric science group that studies the very strange weather we have in Alaska, especially in Fairbanks. And then finally, we have a space physics group, which is the one that got us started. That's primarily focused on the aurora, but how the sun interacts with the Earth and space weather.
So we have what's called the Center for Alaska Native Health Research that is part of IAB and began about 7 years ago. And this has partnerships with the Yukon-Kuskokwim Health Corporation, and it conducts what's called community-based participatory research. So our scientists, some PhDs, we're now hiring MDs as well, go out into these communities where they're well known and meet with individuals and families and tribal councils and ask them, what are you worried about in terms of your own health or your family's or your community's health?
We think our students are better prepared than students really anywhere in the country. I went to the University of Notre Dame. The experience that you have there for undergraduate research is nothing compared to what we have here. We have lots of projects students can get involved with immediately. When we get our students, these are engineering students, into the oil companies, working for the oil companies, working for the state, Department of Transportation, for example, Department of Natural Resources, those students have already been on field crews. They've already done work for the companies. They already understand working in an Arctic environment. The undergraduate research prepares them in a way that they can't be prepared somewhere else.